that like to think of themselves as these big masculine men, and what am I getting out of it? I can tell you this.
There's that feminism.
All right, I believe I'm a woman of virtue, right?
Out. Those are all duties that men have towards women. Great. What do men get out of this arrangement?
If you think you need to get something out of it, I quite frankly don't consider you a real man.
That's because you're an idiot.
You just said, why are you acting like a victim? While you're here talking about how women are victims.
Honestly, my therapist tells me I need to cry, and it's a good relief.
But the point being, Andrew hasn't cried in 10 years.
I think that is such a weakness, Andrew.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. We have got a fantastic debate to go through today. You guys might have seen that Andrew Wilson went on Piers Morgan and debated Tomi Lahren, as well as a few other feminists. And this one is fortuitous timing, guys, because just last week, I called Tomi Lahren a feminist on Twitter, and I was getting all sorts of heat and pushback. And there were all sorts of people white knighting in the comments for Tomi Lahren. And then this debate comes out and shines a light on her feminism. And I'll tell you guys firsthand, being vindicated is bittersweet. So let's dive into the first part now, which is about some random TV show that I've never heard of called Adolescence. Apparently it's very popular, where some young boys are listening to manosphere content online and become radicalized misogynists.
And for all that Andrew Tate can say that is positive about getting fit and being successful and confident and so on, there's indisputably a hardcore streak of misogyny that runs through his veins, which I think has been quite damaging to young men. So I'm not all in either way here, but I can certainly see the arguments. Where do you sit?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that so I watched the show, and it just goes through a typical feminine view, right? So all of these things are always through the prism of the feminine. So young boys, they don't do well in school. They don't do well in school because it's all programmed for the feminine. Stay still, fold your hands, right? Be quiet. Boys are rambunctious. They like to beat each other up. They like to be mischievous. They like to break things. They like to do that kind of stuff. There's no outlet for them to do that stuff. Their teachers are all women, right? There's basically all masculinity is now considered toxic, basically all of it. The same women who are getting their double shot of espresso on the way over to the school they're about to teach at, they're 24 years old. Sometimes they're banging their own students, right? Hilariously enough. And then these people go out to Parliament. The same women will go to Parliament. They vote to send men off to war to stab each other in the face with bayonets. And you're concerned about toxic masculinity. It cracks me up. It's like the brutal savagery of men is a necessary precondition for society to exist, and we just kind of pretend like it's not. And this show should actually be an indictment on the feminine rather than the masculine, because basically masculinity is just punished everywhere, all the time, nonstop. It's no wonder guys like Andrew Tate get so famous in these spaces. I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is everything must be feminine, tone policing, nonsense like this. It's ridiculous.
Okay, so just to dive into this idea before we get to Andrew debating the feminist, the point here is not that Andrew Tate is the ultimate form of masculinity and the ultimate role model for young boys, because this is the straw man that is always created when this argument comes around. I'm sure if Andrew Wilson, or myself for that matter, did a one-on-one with Andrew Tate, we'd be happy to debate him on various different aspects of his worldview. However, we are under no illusion as to why it is that young men have gravitated towards his message and his worldview. It makes complete and total sense. And the reason is, and Andrew Wilson touched on this, is that masculinity and men are just being constantly demonized. And men are just going to instinctively and biologically reject this. The more you tell them how horrible they are for doing what boys and men do, the more they will just completely turn their back on this feminist messaging and do the opposite. And just today, I was scrolling through Ground News, who have been kind enough to sponsor this video, and I came across this story. Schools should be boy positive to tackle male underachievement, report says. And let's see how this is being reported by the left. Return of the alpha male, why toxic masculinity is gaining prominence. Men's problem on the street. The car is a tool to keep the patriarchy alive. And schools should be more boy positive to boost male achievement. Boy positive, not too sure what that means, but the good thing is that with Ground News, you can actually just go into all of these different stories and see exactly what they mean from many different sources. You've also got the bias distribution over here, which shows if it's left, center, or right sources. And basically, this one is pretty much a dead heat. And the great thing about Ground News is that it's a super handy tool that curates tens of thousands of sources from all around the web so that you don't have to go and buy 10 different subscriptions. It allows you to see exactly how these stories are being reported all in one place. Plus, for Rattlesnake TV viewers, Ground News is offering a massive 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use. So all you got to do is hit those links down below, ground.news/rattlesnake. That's ground.news/rattlesnake. Or alternatively, you can hit the QR code on the screen right here. And by doing this, you're not only getting great value, you are helping out a company that supports independent creators like myself. Let's get back to the video. So just before we get to the next clip, guys, I want to just highlight that the Andrew Tate phenomenon is not the first time that male role models have appeared online and had massive influences over young men. Who do you think of? Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. I'd say that Joe Rogan is the most influential, followed by Jordan Peterson. And how did the mainstream and how did the feminists react to these guys? Demonized them, vilified them, called Jordan Peterson a Nazi. It doesn't matter who it is. We live in a very gynocentric social order. So therefore, if men are not being compliant little good boys and falling in line with the feminist messaging, then they're going to complain about them all the same. But the difference between guys like Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson and a guy like Andrew Wilson is that Andrew steps on the absolute landmine that is pointing out that women also have duties in society. And this makes them spontaneously combust and spiral into oblivion every single time. So let's check out this next part and listen really closely to Tomi Lahren's prescriptions about what it takes to be a real man.
I want to bring Tommy in because, Tommy, you've got a very interesting perspective, I think. You've talked about something different. You call it the pussification of men, which is a great phrase. I'd love you to just explain what you mean by that. But also, you're not a fan of Andrew Tate or the influence he has. So that makes you, I think, an interesting commentator in this area. So just explain, first of all, the pussification of men.
All right, Piers. Well, I think, and I can't see you all, so forgive me if I'm incorrect here, but I think I'm the only female on this panel,
Correct.
So I'm really anxious to weigh in. Okay, so I think over the last probably 10 years, there has been what I call the pussification of men. It was everything should be about your emotions and your feelings, and men were emasculated, and this whole concept of toxic masculinity warped the minds of a lot of young men, and they felt masculine, they wanted to be masculine, but society was telling them they should be softer, that it was being toxically masculine if you wanted to play sports and chop wood and go to war. And so men were so emasculated and so beat down that then there was this revolution of what was actually toxic masculinity, the Tate brothers and others, which I feel as a female that doesn't represent true masculinity. That to me represents douchebaggery. And as a woman, I want a strong man who is a protector and a provider that will go to war if need be, that will protect me, protect my family, make money. I see that as being actually masculine. That's like the man that I grew up with, my dad. But what we're seeing now is these young men who look at Andrew Tate and the Tate brothers, and they see somebody who's just quite frankly a douchebag and disrespects women. And because they've been so emasculated, they're like, oh, great, that's a manly man. But that's not right either. So at some point, I think we'll go back to maybe meeting in the middle here. You can be a man who has feelings and emotions, but you can also go to war and protect and defend your family. I'm hoping we can get back there. But the two extremes right now, they're confusing men, and quite frankly, they're leaving women with few choices. And that's the real tragedy here.
So just quickly here, guys, this is what she says she wants. Okay, well, let me ask you one question. Which of the things that she said that she wants can Andrew Tate not do? She said she wants them to chop wood, play sports, a strong man who is a protector and a provider, will go to war if need be, that will protect her and her family and make money. Andrew Tate ticks all of those boxes. 6'4", former kickboxing world champion, probably a billionaire by now. So the reasons that he's not a real man is not because she doesn't tick all those boxes. It's just that she thinks he's a douchebag. And look, with Andrew Tate, I think that we can concede that. She's well within her rights to think that. So I'll use Andrew Wilson as a better example because these people hate him just as much. He doesn't have any past history of extreme degeneracy. He's a stand-up guy who's a leader of his family, and he does all of the things that Tomi Lahren says makes a real man. But the reason why they hate Andrew Wilson so much is because he doesn't take any shit from these feminists. He doesn't let them police his behavior, and he's outspoken about the fact that women have societal duties that should correspond with men's societal duties to make a healthy society. I mean, they will scream from the rooftops about what it means to be a real man. But then, when it comes to talking about the duties of women, well, let's take a look at the next part, which is about as glorious to listen to as a Beethoven symphony.
You see, I completely agree with you, but Andrew, you were shaking your head quite vigorously. Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just more feminine or feminist nonsense, ultimately. And the covert feminism in society is big, especially on the conservative side. So here's what happens, right? Women need to have feminine virtues for men to be pursuing masculine virtues, for you to say things like, well, men, what I want is for men to protect me and I want men to make money. Well, that's great. What that ends up doing is it gives you a set of privilege in society. What do men get? What do men get for doing that for you? What are we getting from women for doing that? Are we getting chaste virgins on our wedding night? No, we're not getting chaste virgins on our wedding night. Are we getting women of great virtue? No, we're not getting women of great virtue. The idea of courtly love is supposed to be done for women of great virtue. Where are they? Well, they're nowhere. And so in modernity, in society, when female conservative influencers say this, it's actually a form of covert feminism. They're saying, I want privilege in society, right? But what is it women are giving to men to get it? What? What are they giving them? Tell me.
Well,
can I please chime in here?
Yes, you can. And then James can, and I'll come to you, Sean.
No, I would love to. I love this whole thing of like, if you're a female conservative and you don't believe that men should be douchebags, that all of a sudden you're a covert feminist. Call me a feminist. I really don't give one crap one way or another. But I can tell you this. A lot of these men, these podcast hosts on the right that like to think of themselves as these big masculine men, and what am I getting out of it? I can tell you this.
There's that feminism.
All right, I believe I'm a woman of virtue, right?
Out.
Yeah, there's the feminism. Oh, and then you're interrupting me too,
Didn't
which
take
is great.
long,
I let
did
you
it? Didn't
talk.
take
It's my
long,
turn.
did it?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to speak over me?
Yeah, I don't care if you call me. I don't really care if you call me a
strong,
feminist.
independent woman.
Yeah. Yeah. You're actually interrupting me. I didn't interrupt you when you were spewing your bullshit. So now it's my turn. Okay.
You mean the truth?
Like I said before. So I believe there we go again. Pierce.
Just a quick reminder, guys, we are swimming against the tide at the moment in terms of YouTube not recommending our content, suppressing a lot of the videos since my USAID videos. Maybe something happened there. So if you guys like the channel and if you want to do your boy a favor, hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. And also subscribe to the channel and make sure that you're still subscribed, because YouTube is unsubscribing a lot of people from the channel. So thank you very much. Back to the video.
I'm a woman of virtue. I happen to be independently successful. I have a husband who's not only a former professional athlete, but is currently a professional baseball coach. So is he not a masculine man? I mean, I'm confused here. What's your concept of a masculine man? Mine is a man who respects me.
Yeah, that misses the point, though. Like, you're still not contending with the argument that I'm making.
What's your point?
I'm saying inside of society, right this second, right, masculinity is not only punished, but also women on the right, covert feminists on the right, are constantly and consistently talking about how they need to have privilege in society. I want men. Their version of masculinity is men who take care of us, men who protect us, men who do all of this. Those are all duties that men have towards women. Great. What are the duties that women have towards men? What are the duties that women have towards anything? What do men get out of this arrangement? What are we getting out of this arrangement? Can you tell me?
I mean,
I was going to answer a second ago. I don't want to interrupt you.
Hang on one second. Let Tommy respond.
Most men are born that way.
Let Tommy respond to that, and then I'll come to you, Jez. And then Sean, you've been waiting patiently. So
most men are born to be protectors and providers. I can't imagine my dad saying, you know what, to my mom, you know what, I'm not going to be a protector and a provider unless you do this. That's not how real men operate. Real men are protectors and providers, and they marry women who hopefully have some virtue, but also bring a lot to the table as well, that are great mothers, great wives, caretakers of the home. There's nothing wrong with being a traditional wife and mother. You're misunderstanding me if you think that I think that women should just be out doing whatever they want. I think that there are gender roles that should be respected. But I don't think a man needs to get something out of it to be a manly man, a protector and a provider. If you think you need to get something out of it, I quite frankly don't consider you a real man.
Yeah, so you have nothing. So you have nothing.
But we'll
No women
discuss
have
in a
no
moment
duties,
whether
nothing.
Andrew
There's just
Wilson is a
privilege.
real man.
Piers, I offer nothing. I offer nothing.
You offer
didn't
me
offer
a
a single
lot of
argument.
things, Tommy.
No.
Well, I mean, Tommy, that is kind of what you just said.
I'm not going to be a protector and a provider unless you do this. That's not how real men operate.
Mothers, wives, taking care of the home, those are all great things. But is that a duty, or is it just nice if they do that? And are they not real women if they don't do that, Tommy? And what is a real woman? Because she's so adamant that if men are not just unquestionably protectors and providers, then they're not a real man. That, my friends, is the rhetoric of a feminist. And I'm sure I'd agree with Tommy on a lot of issues, but not this one. But anyway, she says if you expect anything in return, then you're just not a real man. And that is just hilarious. And then these people wonder why the red pill is so popular, why Andrew Tate is so popular, why the divorce rates are so high, why young people aren't pair bonding. It's because men are sick of being told what to do by this feminist societal conditioning and being berated and belittled and who hurt you if you dare ask for anything in return. And with this sort of messaging, what incentive do young men actually have to try and embody these masculine virtues? Do we do it so that we can have a nagging, loud, quarrelsome, insufferable wife one day who thinks she's trad because she expects a man who's going to be a protector and a provider, but then doesn't actually strive to embody any of those feminine virtues herself? I mean, for me, it's a hard pass. No, thank you. And I actually happen to know a lot of young men who do try and pour their energy into pursuing these virtues. And I'll tell you what they look for: women who are extremely cognizant of their roles and of their duties, and who strive to bring peace and love and value to the man's life. And also women who truly love masculine men and who are not just aware of, but enthusiastic about fulfilling their own feminine duties. And so let's carry on now to the next part and just watch Tommy Laren's face as Andrew is talking about women's duties. Just watch the rage and the seethe.
How do we protect young men from the easy access at the moment there is to people like Tate? I mean, how do you actually put a ring fence around them so that you can tackle exactly what you've just said, but they're not also being dragged into that world?
It's tough because they're growing up in a world we never grew up in, Piers. We didn't grow up with the internet. We didn't grow up with Bumble, Tinder, Instagram, Facebook.
No, I was taught how to treat women by my mother, my grandmother.
Open the door,
my
right?
Aunts,
Open the door.
A lot of strong women in my family, very strong women, and they would just take no crap from the men. So that's the environment I grew up in.
Absolutely. So how do we insulate our children from this? By having conversations, putting parameters around the social media aspects of life, and having the conversations at home. Hey, son. Hey, daughter, this is what you're going to see out there in the real world. This is what you're going to see on the internet. If you see something like this, that is not how a true man is supposed to act. And hey, that's not how a real man's supposed to treat you.
Right. So
we have to have the conversations.
Yeah. Andrew, do you intrinsically disagree with what you've just heard?
Yeah, I do. I think, again, all of this is always the burden on men. Burden on men. Burden on men. Men need to be doing this.
No, it's a family, Andrew. The family.
Hang on. Let me finish.
The family, Andrew.
Men need to
husband and wife.
Okay, yeah. So let me back up. Okay. Again, men need to do this. Men need to do that. What I'm talking about is what duties do women have in society? What are the actual women's duties towards men? Everybody is raised from the time they're kids how we're supposed to treat women. We all know how to treat women. We never talk about how men are supposed to be treated. That's almost never discussed, especially by how women are supposed to treat men, what their duties in society are. This has been completely dispelled. Guys like Tate have risen because Christianity itself has become a feminized religion, especially the Protestant sects has become completely feminized. And it didn't used to punish masculinity at all. And now it does. And so where's the alternative? Where's the spiritual alternative? It's nowhere. And we need to get back to this fundamental question of what even is misogyny, right? When you're talking about misogyny itself, I want to know what that even is. Is it just asserting yourself to women, telling women no, telling them no, that's bullshit?
No, I would say, okay, let me
telling
answer
them you're saying stupid things?
Andrew Tate says he's quite open about it. Women should stay at home. They shouldn't go out to work. They should do what he tells them. He's the king of the castle in his house, blah, 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 blah. That is misogyny. isn't it? You know, I've got a
That's
daughter.
not
I've got a
it's not
13-year-old daughter. I
misogyny.
don't want her thinking she can never leave the house. She's somebody's chattel.
It's not never leaving the house. Look, it is true that the world would be a better place if we didn't have it inverted and women did have a natural role at home, and that was glorified, and that there was government propaganda around the nuclear family and keeping women home. Why do you want to outsource the raising of children to strangers instead of your wife? That's a way better society. Why do you want your best and brightest women forced to go to a workplace instead of the best and brightest women staying at home raising their children? That's a way better system. It's always been a better system.
I guess we're talking freedom of choice.
That's not misogyny.
Women to do anything. It's freedom of choice. It's freedom of choice. I love the fact that my wife's out there working, teaching kids and building adolescents. I love that. And to your point about what do I get from a woman? I have a home. I have 3 beautiful children. I have communication in the house. And to me, that means more than anything. Like, I don't understand where I'm not saying you're wrong in your world, but to sit there and say to a woman, what do I get out of this woman? That's treating her like an object.
One thing I want to play a clip.
Okay, so it's okay to treat men like objects, give them duties,
but
you're not
feel
allowed
like
to
an
give
object.
women duties.
Now, Sean seems like a decent fella. I'm glad that he's got a happy home life and a happy family and everything, and we definitely need more of that. However, his messaging is absolutely typical of the mainstream conservative movement and how they speak to young men. And there are aspects of that that are obviously extremely positive. To be a loving provider and a family man, etc., really good. However, this thing then happens where every time they are questioned about women's duties, they all of a sudden become absolutely terrified to say anything that is even remotely critical of women. And we just saw a perfect example of this. They're all so happy to talk about the duties of men and what makes a real man and what real masculinity is.
I want a strong man who is a protector and a provider that will go to war if need be, that will protect me, protect my family, make money.
That is not how a true man is supposed to act. And hey, that's not how a real man's supposed to treat you.
They would just take no crap from the men.
But then as soon as the question about femininity comes up and about what women should do, they're all offended. I mean, just imagine for a moment, let's go into dreamland. Imagine you go into business with somebody. You go into a business partnership and you say, listen, my duties in this partnership are going to be X, Y, and Z. And then they say, yep, great. Your duties are X, Y, and Z. And then you say, okay, cool. Now your duties are A, B, and C. And they say, what? I feel objectified. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I don't know if it's because they're terrified of their wives or if it's because they're really scared about the sort of like sassy trad women on Twitter who will attack them for this, or if the conservative movement in general is just really scared of disenfranchising and scaring away young women and seeing them go over to the liberals who preach no accountability whatsoever. But whatever it is, it's definitely happening. Anyways, on to the last bit now. Let's watch Andrew.
Women duties.
I feel respected.
Okay,
in
well,
my
let me
home.
ask you this.
I'm not
How come
angry
it is
about
in the United States that men can be drafted? Women can't be drafted, but women can vote to send men to war. 18 years old, they're stabbing each other in the face with bayonets. Women can vote to send men to war that they then themselves do not have to fight. It's a duty that men have, they do not have. What's the counter duty for women? There's no obligation for women to have children, well under replacement rate. It's slated 45% of women will be single in the next 10 years, up to 60% in the next 30. That's the estimates right now. Our replacement rate, we can't even replace our own country's birth rates. That's how low they are. This is what we're seeing as a systemic issue inside of society because nobody will put duties on women.
Go on,
Instead, you just
maybe it's men like you that are making that
Maybe that's why the
Maybe you're the
replacement rate is low.
Yeah,
it's crazy to me as well that you are just saying.
Don't talk over each other. Let James speak.
I can't understand why you are sat there confidently thinking of yourself as a victim constantly. You have a platform and you're sat here like, I'm a victim. What are women doing for me? What happened in your childhood that has made you so traumatized as an adult that you cannot stand women succeeding? I'm so confused. I feel like the problem is not, and actually maybe this is our fault. Maybe this is the left's fault. Maybe this is modern society's fault for leaving people like you behind. But genuinely, we do not hate men, and toxic masculinity has been thrown around a lot. Ultimately, some of what you're saying is toxic, but that's not because you're a man. That's because you're an idiot.
All right.
Okay. So just to give you a quick rejoinder here, again, didn't contend with a single argument I made. You just said, why are you acting like a victim? While you're here talking about how women are
You're not
victims.
contending with arguments that other people
It's
are making.
wild to me. It's so wild to me.
You know,
All right, I want to play. Let me play another clip.
I know this is Piers'
Let him cook. Guys, the only way that they can really respond to that, as you can see, is just by going to the ad hominem attacks. The feminine attacks on his character. Who hurt you?
What happened in your childhood that has made you so traumatized?
Society left you behind, he said.
Modern society's fault for leaving people like you behind?
Well, actually, James, if you want to throw some insults out there, actually, it's people like Andrew, who raised 5 children and who is actually a family man, that is holding society together at the moment. And people like you are just reproductive dead ends who are dancing at queer parades and talking about dismantling the patriarchy, and actually you have no vision for the future of civilization. The fact of the matter is that if we want a healthy society where we can actually replace our population and the nuclear family is promoted and we have healthy male-female relationships, then men and women both have duties. And at the moment, it's very clear that we are happy to talk about one, but not the other. And that never used to be the case. And this is what feminism has done to our culture. It has created feminized men and masculine women. And this next section actually kind of perfectly highlights the absolute garbage that is being forced down men's throats about how they're bad people if they don't act like women.
Let me go to Tommy. Tommy, I want to play you a clip. This is from a show called Newsnight on the BBC in the UK, where the host, Victoria Derbyshire, had a panel of young men on and asked them, when was the last time you cried? Let's watch this.
When was the last time you cried?
Honestly, the last time I cried, I couldn't tell you.
Same with Leo. I can't really remember the last time that I cried fully.
A lot of times I feel emotion and I look at myself, why can't I cry? We're told to suppress our emotions.
I feel like to guys, we may be treated a certain way that evokes an idea that we have to be extremely strong and upfront and here as a man, and I'm going to be composed at all times.
Andrew Wilson, when was the last time you cried?
When I had a death in my family.
And how long ago was that, if you don't mind me asking?
Many years. Many years. I don't know, maybe a decade, something like that.
Right. So you haven't shed a tear in a decade?
I don't think so, no.
Would you see it inherently as a weakness in a man to over-emote?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Men, listen, you don't want men to fall to pieces in crisis. You're the head of a family. You're the head of your household. And also you're the heads of nations. You have a moral obligation not to fall to pieces. In fact, I would say you're duty-bound not to. You need to be able to control your emotions, and you need to be able to attempt to control them at all times. It's not to say that you're not going to lose control. Nobody's perfect. But I think that the idea of the stoic man is a much better prospect for the idea of, like, this leftist that I'm arguing with next to me on the panel. I would not want to be that guy, that person who just cannot control their internal emotions. They can't do it. And unfortunately, again, this is through the viewpoint of the feminine prism that it's only through empathy, right? Empathy first. And it's like, no, it's not always about empathy. It's also about reason. It's also about logic. It's also about understanding that we live in a carnal world full of warring tribes who are always killing each other. And that's part of the human condition. You can't afford to have your men losing control to emotion or to empathy.
James, when was the last time you didn't cry on a date? Let's flip the question around.
I haven't cried today, but I did cry yesterday, and I think it's okay to cry. And it's funny that you keep trying to goad me and saying that I don't have control of my emotions. I think I have incredible control over my emotions because I know what's upsetting me and when, and I'm able to talk about it.
Well, how often do you cry?
I mean, not all the time, but
every day?
No, not every day, Piers. I cried yesterday.
2 or 3 times a week?
I probably haven't cried for about 3 weeks before that. But honestly, my therapist tells me I need to cry, and it's a good relief.
But the point being, Andrew hasn't cried in 10 years.
I think that is such a weakness, Andrew, that you haven't cried in a decade. Like, that's crazy to me.
My therapist told me I could cry.
I'm so worried about you. I can't understand. Well, you're crying now, and please, I happily facilitated that for you.
I think we're seeing the 2 extremes that Tommy was talking about.
It's honestly, yeah, Tommy, you're so right. There's no nuance. I mean, it's difficult to have nuance on this show anyway, but we do need to find some in this debate.
Isn't it funny how Tommy Lauren and the gay liberal male feminist are now teaming up? They are like two peas in a pod. And honestly, it's wholesome to see this relationship blossoming. But in terms of the logic, I think that on some fundamental level, men just understand this. When we're being told to cry all the time, because if you don't cry, then you're not emotionally intelligent. Obviously, you need to act more like women who are the emotionally intelligent sex, even though crying is actually kind of losing control of your emotions. We understand that that just doesn't really feel natural to us most of the time. And there are many other ways that men often go about dealing with their emotions. I mean, it definitely might happen from time to time, but it doesn't make you a better person if you do that. But once again, this is what it comes down to. The feminists want to be able to police our behavior by telling us not to go to the gym, not to go and hang out with the boys and have a solutions-based conversation. Don't use logic and reason. Don't go for a long drive to cool off. You have to cry about it, and if you don't cry about it, then you're toxic and you're not emotionally intelligent. And that's just bullshit. And we're not buying it anymore. So anyways, guys, should be a very interesting comment section on this one. Looking forward to reading all of your thoughts below. Don't forget to check out Ground News, the fine sponsor of this video. And if you guys would like to watch another video, you can click right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV, keeping you armed and dangerous.